All right, put your ear goggles on. Cameras are rolling.
Camera's on. Does that sound okay?
You sound lovely, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Every show, I gotta fix this stupid thing. And away we go.
Now for something special. The unit is self-contained with its own saddler, farrier, wheelwright and so on. It's a rigorous training dished out who know all there is to know about horses, and it brings results.
We take you behind the scenes now to show just some of the interesting aspects of this training.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the award-winning #1 podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. Mike Stine is a registered journeyman farrier with an APF 1 accreditation. On this week's show, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of horseshoes and the earliest known in Italy from 400 BC. Also, a discussion of the American Farrier's Journal Horseshoe Guide Volume 2, and talking terminology, the definition of a fullered horseshoe. All this and much, much more will be discussed here on Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. And over to my far right-hand side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you doing?
You're all right. I'm doing all right. You're doing all right.
Emma?
I don't know, because you don't have coffee this morning. What are you drinking over there? It looks like swamp water.
It is swamp water.
And don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video over on YouTube, Equine Dynamics Mike Stine YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe over there, and you can see us in real time as we're having fun here in the studio. Mike's got a whole bunch of visuals, and when Mike brings visuals here in the studio,
it scares you, doesn't it?
It does scare me, and we put them up on the YouTube page as well, and we talk about them in real time. So make sure you go over there and subscribe as well. So I got good news, Mike.
You do?
Well, I got good news and bad news.
Good news and bad news.
Yeah. So my wife, I told you she's been training and getting ready for this big, event. And, it's a 2-day show. She went down to Aiken, South Carolina, and she was so nervous because 3 days before, the horse wasn't doing what she wanted to do, and she wasn't trying to do what the horse wanted.
She probably wasn't doing what the horse wanted to do, right?
Yeah, like, get off of me. But, she can't.
to eat.
Yeah, exactly. But she came back from one of her lessons and in tears, I'm so nervous. I'm so scared. I'm going to make a fool of myself, that type of stuff. Now, she hasn't shown in several years now. This is her real first competition. And I said, relax, babe. Everything will be fine. So like the day or two before, she went out to the barn where Diego's being held. Yep. I say held like he's a hostage or anything, but where he does the
like a concentration camp.
No, it's where he gets trained and everything out there. And she came back. She's like, I feel much better. Everything's good. I got all the butterflies out. He did well. I did well. Blah, 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 blah. So she leaves.
Right.
She goes to Aiken, South Carolina. I'm not allowed to go.
I don't blame her.
Because she's got one child that she's dealing with, being Diego. She doesn't need another child, me.
She did need something that would definitely raise the stress level.
Yeah, so she didn't need me there at all. So we get there, or she gets there. And she does all her stuff. She's got, she has 2 ride times, one for this and one for this, and does everything. Let's see. She did both events. The last ride was at 1:30, 2 o'clock. She calls me at 2:01, literally like got off the horse and calls me and says, we did so good. And I'm like, I was so glad. I was so glad that she did very well. Now, she doesn't know her scores or anything yet. So they all go out to eat, and they come back, and I guess they post the ribbons on the stalls.
Right.
And she came back, and she had 1 first place ribbon and 1 second place ribbon. So the first ride she did, she got first place out of, I think there were 6 of them there. And the second one, she got second place out of 5.
Right.
So she was so happy to even get a ribbon. Even if it was like participation type ribbon type deal.
Right. Yep.
So that's the good news. She did very well. It's a schooling course, so it's not put on her permanent record, but at least she has that ability. She's being more familiar with the training event in itself. The bad news is my wife and I walk every day 3 miles because we're going on a cruise, Mike, so I have to get my waist down a little bit.
Well, you'll get it built back up on the cruise.
Yeah, exactly. And this past Saturday, I said, babe, do you want to go on a walk with me? Because normally she's at work. So she's like, yeah, I'll go with you. Now, my wife has a bad time with her ankle. She's got a weak ankle, 1 weak ankle. I said, okay, babe, be careful walking. Now, the road out front, you know how if they've ever paved the road and the road, they put another road on top of it,
Right.
And it's got that little 4-inch drop off onto the other road, right on the shoulder.
Right, got it.
Guess what? Stepped right off of it, rolled her ankle. We didn't even get 200 yards from the house. Stepped off, rolled her ankle, and heard a pop and stuff. So she's limping around the house.
Yeah.
We're going on a cruise in 2 weeks, so she better get better quick.
You're not giving her any choice, right?
No choice at all. So it's funny that, you can do all this lessoning and stuff on the horse and watching a horse and making sure the horse.
You know how dangerous horses are.
Exactly. And then just turn.
And you can't walk across the street.
Exactly. You can't walk across the street, but you expect this horse to do all these evasive maneuvers and stuff. Now she rides dressage, so not as necessarily evasive maneuvers, but still maneuvers nonetheless.
Well, that kind of goes back on that old thing, talking about the chicken crossing the road, right?
Why is that?
To show the possibility of it could be done.
That's silly. All right, guys. Speaking of silly, we got a big show to get into. Lots to talk about. So stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Show the possum it could be done.
There you go.
All right. We're going to talk a little bit about a history of horseshoes. The earliest evidence found in a tomb in Italy around 400 BC. Is that right?
Yes.
You got a lot to talk about this or no?
We can talk about a lot of stuff, yeah.
Okay. Well, here we go.
We'll make a section out of it.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me move you over there a little bit. Give you a little bit more room. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. If you have any questions for Mike Stine, the way you do that is go over to equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says contacts. Fill out that little form. If you have a question for Mike Stine, ask him a question. We'll read it here on the air or answer you in email. But make sure you put a physical return address on there, because what we'll do is anyone who emails Mike a question about the show or any questions in general about the Equine Dynamics, we'll send you a little prize pack. We got some magnets, some stickers, some keychains, some buttons, a whole bunch of neat little items that we've accumulated over the years. Doing this show for over 2.5 years now. And so we'd like to hear from you as well. And that's equinedynamics.com. And waiting to hear from you right now over to my far right side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you, Travis?
I'm good. I can tell the difference between your swamp water, you not having coffee.
Right.
So I know you're like sitting over there just like kind of
fighting it. I've got coffee.
Do you?
Yeah.
Where's it at?
At home in the pot.
Oh, you didn't make it. Mike, I always say if you ever come over here, we always have the pot on. So
Okay, a pot of coffee.
Pot of coffee.
Pot of coffee.
Pot of coffee. All right. So you're welcome to it anytime. Now, right now, we're going to discuss a little bit. We're going to go off the beaten path here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the history of horseshoes. Now, Mike, according to this article right here, evidence has found in a tomb in Italy of horseshoes around 400 BC. So tell us the history of a little bit about what's going on there.
Well, there's, horses, became useful to humans once we figured out we could use them as pack animals, as whatever, transportation. Kind of played a big part in changing how the world worked. Played a huge part. And then horses were used in warfare. Back to the Mongols, back to the Romans, back to whoever. But some of the earliest deals that they found for horses were probably leather woven grass slippers, to the iron slippers that were laced on and eventually became nailed on. That have found brass, like bronze horseshoes, which actually that type of a horseshoe had an application later in history in mining, so that your
didn't cause a spark.
Brass and copper, horseshoes, so they didn't cause sparks in the mines when horses were used in the mines in this country. A lot of different materials were used, but as using horses and building roads out of stone and everything else, they were wearing feet out faster than horses were growing them. And so they did something to protect the horses, to keep them useful. They didn't want the horses laid up because they've got them sore-footed, right?
Correct.
And then if you look at warfare and plowing with horses and what was done with that, so that the horse could, could pull and plow, even like
Get like traction and stuff.
traction. And some of the most interesting shoes I've seen, not that I would want them stepping on the foot, when they were moving ice blocks up, this would be up north, not in our part of the country, but they used to, cut ice out of the lakes and pull ice blocks across the lakes. And they have the big shoes, the big heavy drafts that were moving the ice wore, and they had ice spikes on them. So there's been a lot done, and we're recreating and re-engineering, relearning how to shoe horses.
Are they like golfer shoes, the golfer cleats with the little metal, the ice shoes?
Something like that, yes. Kind of like your old baseball shoes with spikes sticking out of them,
I don't think you're allowed to use the metal cleats in baseball.
You were not?
No, we were not.
We were not.
No.
Okay. What kind of cleats did you use?
Yeah, they had to be rubber. They had to have a rubber sole on them
Okay.
because when you slid into a base, they didn't want those injuring the player.
At one time, way back, there were some metal cleats for certain things.
And then someone said, "Stop sliding into my leg. You're killing me."
That's right. Yes. Well, it was a good way to get your opponent, slow them down when they were running that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So I know one of the things that we showed on a past podcast ago is I showed you a picture of these horseshoes that were like two separate, but they went on one hoof.
Right.
And they ended up being ox
shoes.
ox
Yes.
shoes. Yeah.
And also, like U.S., you go back to U.S. Cavalry. Some of those old cavalry tools that were U.S. cavalry tools are actually worth something. But there were some shoes where they hinged the toe so that a cavalryman, if he lost a shoe, it's something that he could easily adjust on the trail and get back on with a very minimal amount of tools to get his horse to the next blacksmith shop.
Now, we talk about horseshoes. I just brought up ox shoes. Is there any other animals that we put shoes on? I'm thinking like the circus. Do they do something for elephants? I know they don't have a hoof per se. They have a foot.
I do know that they trim the elephants, and they're on some very thick rubber mats when they're at the circus, because I went down when Barnum and Bailey was still going and assisted one of the circus farriers when they were in Columbia at one point. And that was kind of interesting. He needed some things, so I got a phone call.
Now, do we shoe donkeys? Do we shoe? I know we shoe mules.
Donkeys and mules were shoed.
Okay.
And there were shoes found on back for donkeys and mules for pulling. Then they started at a point adding big.
That totally went right down the wrong pipe. Okay, go ahead.
They started adding traction devices, putting heels on them.
Sorry. All right, go ahead.
And they were used as pack animals, pulling animals, and all that. As far as I know that there's been other animals that have been used as pack animals. As far as putting shoes on them, I don't know anything about it.
Goats? Would you shoe a goat?
Yeah, to get them out of your grain bin.
Yeah, shoe goat.
Go away. Yeah, shoe. Exactly.
No, but I mean, they used goats for work. I mean, you were talking about pack animals.
Right.
I was thinking like
goats, probably llamas and stuff like that have been used as pack animals. Camels have certainly been used as pack animals.
Have you ever shoot a camel or a llama?
Never shoot a camel or a llama. I've been asked to trim a llama's feet.
Oh, you have?
Yes, they can be very quick with their hind feet.
Oh, and you don't do that too often?
I thought they went by quick enough that they looked okay.
Yeah. All right. I apologize because I took a sip of my my.
You want some of my swamp water?
Yeah, I'll take some of your swamp water over there. All right, guys, stick around. When we come back, we're going to discuss. Mike's got a whole bunch of different horseshoes. He's going to be, we're going to set up some spikes here and play a couple rounds of horseshoes. But he's got a whole bunch of different types, varieties, and makes and models of horseshoes. So if you're not watching this on the YouTube channel, now's a good chance to go over there and watch all the different things that Mike's got over on his little TV tray of goodness over there. So stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Excuse me. Whew.
Quit that.
I know.
Just quit. It's not a problem anymore, right?
No, yeah, just stop. Just be happy.
Yeah. Just quit breathing. You'd never be a problem. You wouldn't cough anymore.
So what do they say? If you're choking, you drink something and you're choking. Well, what are you choking? I'm choking. Well, drink something. No, that's what made me start choking.
Right, exactly.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, brought to you by Equine One. Our friends up in Canada, they produce this. What is the actual product? Mike's got it over there on his hand there. What is that? We have hoof mender.
Hoof mender, hoof putty, and we have the hoof dressing, which is all natural hoof oil.
So you can get 10% off your order right now by putting the keyword podcast or Equine Dynamics upon checkout. That's equine.one for all your hoof care needs. Now, speaking of hoof care, Mike, what do we got there on the table? You got a whole bunch of
We've got
horseshoes.
a few random horseshoes here.
Right, let me switch camera so everyone can see it. We can all be friends here. So what are we looking at?
Well, these are all open heel shoes. There's so much stuff out there these days. And, back at a time, they were twisting, twisting together fence wire, forge welding it together to make a horseshoe, and anything they could, old gate hinges, whatever could happen. And we have what would be called a keg shoe pattern, which is somewhere between a front and a hind shoe. This is a rim shoe, which would be got the full crease in it, or fullered all the way around.
And we'll talk about that here in a little bit.
Yes, we will. Then later on, they've come out with like a front pattern and a basic hind pattern, which you modify. I modify all of them because I do a lot of hard work.
Now, hold up the first one more time, Mike.
Right.
Oh, the first one. No, not that one. The fullered one.
The keg shoe pattern.
All right, the keg shoe pattern. Now, for those of you that aren't watching the video, shame on you, but still.
Used to buy them in kegs. They came in kegs of 50 pounds.
Okay.
And that's why they called it a keg shoe.
So what we're looking at here is your typical horseshoe shape, but in the center of it, there's this track or a carve out all the way around the whole entire shoe that's dug out,
right,
where the nail holes go. Now, what's the reason why the whole entire thing is dug out?
For if you need to add some extra traction on the foot.
Okay.
You can also get this pattern where you've just got the crease where the nail holes are, and it's flat across the front, flat across the heels. There are also shoes that are stamped, where it's only the nail hole stamped, and I do not have any stamped shoes with me.
All right, so that's that one. Show me the next one that you were just about to show me.
There are horseshoe blanks that are the shape with no nail holes that you put in what you want.
And how do you get the holes? How do you get the nail holes in there?
You punch them, you stamp them, you folder them, depending on what kind of traction you want.
Okay. So now we've got another horseshoe where that divot, that engraving, the cutout is not all the way around. It's only where the nail holes are.
Only where the nail holes are.
Now, why would someone choose this one over the other one?
Well, one thing is ease of removing nails without pulling the whole shoe off. Over a stamp shoe, sometimes stamp shoes, once horses been in a while, if you just want to remove a certain nail, it's kind of tough getting the nails out of them. If you don't want as much traction, this is a wider shoe. If you got a bigger horse, wider web. If you got a really flat-footed horse, you might want a little wider web than one that has a lot of cup to it. These can be easily modified. Any of them can. And if I wanted this to have a full crease, I can fuller the crease into it. And that's one of those things we're going to talk about in a minute.
Right. Now, so what shoes does Diego have on in between those? Does he have one of those two on or no? Or is this a different shoe that Diego has on?
No, Diego's got something totally different on.
Okay.
It is a hind pattern shoe, but it is what they call a graduated hind. And it's got a broad toe in it. And then I've hammered the toe out to make a really broad toe in it. And also move the breakover back.
Now, do you hot shoe Diego?
I hot shoe Diego. I hot shoe most everything.
Oh, do it. Okay.
And this would be a hind pattern. It makes life a little easier these days. We do make shoes for practice, for competitions. Day to day, if you got 10 horses lined up in front of you, the practicality of making shoes makes it a little difficult to sit there and make shoes. And but you can make this out of a piece of straight bar,
and just hammer it on your anvil.
Hammer it on the anvil, run your crease, stamp your holes, pull your clips. These are pre-clip shoes, and I use a good many clipped horses. And I do so many clips on horse. I do not hand pull all the clips unless it's in a position I don't need it.
Go ahead.
where I needed in a different spot.
When's the last time you actually took a straight bar and made a shoe? Do you have a certain, this is, hey, I've got nothing that'll work on this horse except for me making a shoe from.
Well, back in the 90s when I was doing contests, I made shoes every week, multiple times.
So it was a common practice.
It was a common practice. At this point, do I turn something occasionally? Yes, I do. Probably the last thing that I turned, I wanted a really, really wide shoe because of the width of it, and I took a piece of aluminum that was over an inch wide and turned it.
And what's the process? Do you heat the shoe up, and then is it the old-fashioned like you see when you go to like Renaissance festivals where you're literally hammer on anvil and you're
Yes.
smacking it?
Yes, hammering the anvil, and with aluminum, it holds heat, and you got to be careful with heating it because they'll melt from the inside out on you. But I wanted
Like a Pop-Tart.
Like Pop-Tart, yeah. But I wanted something that had a lot of width to the shoe to protect the foot for a while. And this was something that was glued on, so I did not, because of the situation, I did not bother with putting any nail holes in it. Didn't need them. You can still run clips on something like that if you want just clips.
And it'll stay on.
And you can glue on about anything these days. You can glue on steel shoes. I prefer to glue aluminum, because for me it glues easier, but there are ways you can glue a steel shoe on.
Okay, now speaking of aluminum shoes, you've got a pair of nice shiny ones over there. See, I've said this before.
Shiny is pretty, right?
If I had a horse and it was in a show, I would want the shiniest, prettiest, coolest looking shoes on it. That way, when it picks his feet up, everyone goes, "Ooh, look at those! What are those?
You can get
Air
them
Jordans?
with flashy lights in them now too, probably.
I'm sure you can. Put some LED lights in there.
LED lights so they blink on and off and all that. Now these are, I've got about 3 different aluminum shoes here. This is an Equilibrium made by Mustad, and it's got a breakover built into it. And I've got a steel shoe that is similar to this that I use sometimes. On these shoes, if I want a weight difference, I will put that roll into it with a forge. You can grind it in, but you're also messing with weight distribution in the shoe as far as weight balance. If you forge it in, you're keeping it there, and you're not getting rid of the metal, you're just reshaping it. But you can see this shoe is rolled where the breakover is not just straightforward. It can go here or here. So it's not locked into one position.
And what's the advantage of having that? What kind of horse would that be on?
If you're trying to do something to take pressure off the flexor tendon on the breakover phase, that would be helpful for that. Some horses with some joint damage would like the easier roll.
I think my wife needs a pair of those just to keep.
We need a pair of those
for her
sure.
while she goes walking around.
Now, this is another shoe with a good forward breakover, and it's got a high ridge on it. And part of that is this is an Avante. I've got a few of these that I've got on. I do a handful of shooting horses. Mm-hmm. They go out and they kill poor helpless balloons.
Right. I think we had a gentleman on the show. His wife did that.
Right. She's a balloon killer. Mm-hmm. She's rough.
Now that looks like it's made for running and sharp turns and stuff with that big spine that's on it.
Well, it could, and that gives you a little bite in the ground. It also gives you some side-to-side roll when they go to turn. It's easier for the foot to roll side to side, easier for it to roll forward. And there's situations where, depending on the ground they're on, you want a little more roll one side or the other because of taking stress off collateral ligaments. If you got a collateral ligament strain, you definitely want to alleviate the roll in one direction. Another direction, you may not want to alleviate it. You might want to stabilize it on the other side, depending on what's going on and the ground conditions.
Back to my baseball days, when you were asking me about my cleats, I had the rubber cleats, but up by where your toes are, not necessarily your toe, but where the joint is, your knuckles for your toes. I don't know what that is. I had cleats that actually came up and rolled on the side of the shoe.
Wow.
So when you were running the bases, that's the way you would turn, and you want that cleat to kind of stick in, and that's kind of like that. What was that one called?
The Avante.
Avante, yeah. I think I went to school with him too.
It's got a higher inner rim.
Yes.
On the shiny aluminum shoes, this is a red and rocker. The nail holes are not completed. They did run a crease in it. You can put nail holes where you want to, with a rotary punch, a drill press.
Fancy
rotary punch. Yes, and because of like on this shoe, if you want to pull a clip, there's not a lot of material in there, and it's easier to weld one in.
Now, why would you want to pull a clip? Why would you put a clip on there? I guess is where I'm going.
Just if you've got a very unstable hoof wall, depending on the job, on the shooting horses, you won't see that much of that. On horses that are going over jumps or your big heavy horses hitting the ground, it takes pressure off the nails. But you don't have to use that because of that being thinner and this higher rim to pull material out of the clip. They just gave you a little bubble there you could work with, or you can get rid of it. It's easy to take off. It takes about half a second to knock it off of there. And these, if you want to nail them, you can finish the nail holes. But
would you glue that?
I do glue these from time to time because these can be ridden in, and some of them do go in the show ring. In fact, I've had horses go in some a lot more aggressive than this. But in a therapeutic situation, if you got a really sore-footed horse, sometimes you don't want to nail them. And this situation, I just recently took a pair of these off that I'd kept on for 2 shoeing cycles. And that's one of those deals. I've had people say, oh, you can't glue shoes for a long period of time, or they just come off. Well, your prep has to be right. Your temperature has to be right. And you need to understand air temperature and how your glue is going to be affected by it. Sometimes you have to play with the temperature of your glue. But, at the end of 2 shoeing cycles, being aluminum, they're grinded off where they want it. And, we had heated these up, so we kind of killed the temper on them to make them a little softer. But I wanted this horse to get some foot on it. And I took a towing knife and started the heel and cut them off with the towing knife at the end of 10 weeks. And they had to be cut off. They weren't coming off of there. So to glue a shoe to stay, it can be done. But you need somebody that's experienced with gluing.
And the right glue.
There are plenty of poly shoes, the Polyflex shoes that Curtis makes down there in Florida. I've put those on. Those are made to glue on only. There are several other assorted poly type shoes out there that I have used here and there. It's not something that is a weekly or regular deal with me. Some people do a lot of that. On the endurance horses I work on, some of the poly shoes work out really nice for them.
Who's the gentleman that we had on the show from South Africa?
Derek Papard.
Yeah, and his 3D hoof stuff. I see stuff on Facebook all the time, only because I'm following him on Facebook.
Right.
And he's got all these different polymer shoes and all these different.
Right, I need to get back up with Derek anyway.
Crossbar shoes and Z-bar shoes and all these holes and stuff. And it looks like every single one of them are glued on, which is because he's 3D printing these shoes.
Right. Poly shoes that nail on. Some of them have a metal plate inside to hold the nails.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So they don't come pulling through?
And there were also some rubber-coated shoes. There was a time when I was doing some horses that were in a couple of movies. And there was one deal where they were filming down in Wilmington, North Carolina. They did a chase scene. And I want to say it was an Olivet, but it was a rubber shoe, had a metal plate inside of it.
That would wreak havoc on the sound guy with those horses clip-clopping all over
Well, the other thing is they were galloping down asphalt.
Right.
And the nails recessed up in the shoe. And they said they went around went down the sidewalk and around the corner like they had tennis shoes on. And they did, they got their shots they wanted. Those are a little different to work with. As far as a really, really aggressive mechanical shoe, this is a red and Ultimate. And of course, he has the bubbles there for pulling a clip if you want to.
Now, when you say red and Ultimate, this is Doc
Redden.
Yeah.
And, on this big rocker, I would tend towards putting the clips on there because they're coming up and they're leaning forward, pushing forward on the shoe on a really extreme low palmar angle. And I've got horses that will, they've got some issues we're working with, and people, oh my God, I'd never whatever with. If you don't want to, you don't want to. It's your deal. But I've got horses that are going in the dressage arena and doing quite well wearing these.
That's the question I was going to ask. What type of riding would that shoe go on? Or can it adapt to any type of riding, whether it be eventing or...
2 degrees, it can be adapted. Some years ago, I had a young lady who... I had a rail shoe, which was a really high mechanics. And I was like, let the horse get used to this and start deciding where he's going to be able to work. And she sent me some pictures of the horse coming across a prelim jump with those things on. I'm like, oh no, but she said, oh, he was great. He rolled right. He went right through it, landed, he was stable and all that. And I didn't know how it would work out, but she pushed it a little further than I was anticipating. Let's say that.
Field testing.
Yes. You got to try it. Because we'd had a big discussion about what she did with her horses, and right at that time, we're trying to get this guy happy, which we got the guy happy. He was not walking real good before, and we got him walking real good, and then all of a sudden, he's doing prelim jumps. I'm like, whoa, let's back up a minute.
You're good to go. Let's go. Get on there.
So, but there are a huge amount of options. There are direct glue, there are indirect glue. They have cuffs coming up on the outside. They have some that have fabric on the outside where you can glue to the fabric. Every year they come up with something new. There's a lot of shoes that have come on the market and disappeared. And with any of these shoes, if you want any of these shoes to become a bar shoe or something, you can put bars in them. You can put, your Z-bar. You can make any of them to a Z-bar type pattern or anything you want.
It's just a matter of tack welding it on there.
Tacking it and cutting it and grinding it, and if you're handy enough in the forge, you can do it in the forge.
It's a shame that you can't put a lawnmower blade on, though, Mike.
No kidding.
That's a background story we can get into another day. All right, guys, stick around. When we come back, we're going to talk terminology. And Mike brought up the term fullard, and we're going to dive into what that actual term means. So stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, brought to you by Equine One. Go to equine.one for 10% off all your hoof care need with the keyword podcast or Equine Dynamics. And over to my far right side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you?
Do you like that little jingle that I made for...
I did. Are we playing it?
Yeah, well, we just played it last break, but I had a whole band in here. Some of my Randy Travis friends. His band came in here and
right. They were in town for the big festival, right?
Yeah, so I was able to get them in here in the studio, and I forget the lead singer's name. His name's Tom or Timothy or something like that.
Right. They had to check with you before they set up the festival, right?
Somewhat, yes. All right, so now we're going to talk terminology. Talking terminology, if you're new to the program, is essentially if you hear any barn talk, your vet talk, your farrier talk, trainer talk, or anything like that, and they mention a certain word, and you're just not quite sure what it is. Well, we go through every week and kind of define some of these terms so you feel a little bit more comfortable when hearing these words and know exactly what's going on. Mike, as you heard last break or last segment, he mentioned the word fullard horseshoe. And that's Fullerd, horseshoe. Now, Mike, what do you mean when you say that term, fullard horseshoe?
Well, we'll make noise, bang stuff around and all that. The crease in the shoe.
And I'm going to show this. If you're watching this over on YouTube, you can see this in real time as Mike's talking about it here on the show.
Would be considered a crease or a fuller.
Okay.
There's some arguments with everything. You can't get horseshoers to agree on anything. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
But in a blacksmithing shop, if you had a straight steel and you took a tool similar to this one is actually made on a curve. So with a horseshoe, you start the turn and then you drive it into the shoe when you're doing handmade shoes and you walk it around and hit it.
And this looks like a really, really small hatchet, but it's not.
It is not.
It's got a blunt end. It's not a sharp end.
Right. And this one has a wooden handle. And I prefer the wooden handle tools because it takes the vibration out on the hand you're working the tool with.
What about a fiberglass home with a rubber handle? Would that work or no? Because I've got hammers out there that are like that.
You can have them.
Okay. Keep them to yourself, kid.
Keep them to yourself. We don't want them. But I prefer a wooden handle. Now, some of these tools will have metal handles in them, but you're going to get a certain amount of vibration through them when you're striking with a hammer.
But you get less kickback.
Less vibration through the wooden handle. And people look at that as, well, that's a hammer because it's got a wooden handle. Well, it's not. But anyway, you work, hit, work. And like I say, in a blacksmith shop, the cutting edge would probably be more straight. And you could do it with a horseshoe in a straight mode. But if you're taking straight bar stock, and you're driving this into it, part of the reason this is called fullering. If I've got a piece of straight stock, I'm driving the tool into it, the metal goes out. It makes it fuller.
Hence the term fullering.
Fullering, making it fuller, makes you a little wider.
Now show that hammer one more time, Mike. On one side, flip it over. On one side, it's completely smooth. No, all the way over. There you go. That side is completely smooth.
Right.
Like the hatchet side. If you were to see that from the side, you're like, okay, that looks like a hatchet. Now flip it over to the other side.
Right.
Why does it have that little divot cut out? Looks like a bottle opener on the side.
Well, you can open bottles with it. Actually, probably, you could. But just in the act of way these are typically forged, that is done to set your where you center up your fuller. Because a lot of times when you forge them, you end up with it off to one side, then they forge it back, and it brings everything back to center.
Oh, okay.
And when they're hand making them,
I'll go with that. Think you're making some of that up, though.
we'll go with that.
I didn't mean to.
It depends on who does it or what they look like.
I didn't mean to pose the impossible question to you, Mike.
I think that's more of a traditional way of doing it.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like something like you could like fold, like it looks like you can put the horseshoe in and kind of like smooth it out or roll it around or something like. Don't break the cameras, Mike.
How's that?
Yeah,
that's what it's used for.
Yeah, something like that, just to hold it up, I guess.
And that could be part of it.
So fullering is the groove or crease running either the whole part of the length and the ground surface of the length of the ground surface. Who wrote this?
Don't know.
Ground surface of the shoe. So, would you say that most of your shoes have a fuller line in them?
I use a lot of shoes with fuller lines in them. Something like a sliding plate, or if you're trying to remove traction, you would not have the fuller line because the sliding plate, you want it to slide through the ground. It's been years since I've done sliding plates.
Now, with this on this aluminum shoe, I'm going to reach over here. Is this considered a fullered line?
Yes, it would be considered a fullered line. It was machined in, but yes.
See,
or drop forged in.
See, I wouldn't call that. I know that the terms stick around just because of ancient history and 400 BC, where these shoes and so on and so forth, just tradition. I would just call that it was routed out.
Well, in woodwork, it would be routed out.
Yeah, like if you were to take a piece of wood and routed out a place to recess all your nails and stuff, those horseshoes, that fullered line looks like it's just someone took a router.
And if you were making your shoes on a CNC machine, that's probably exactly what would happen.
What's a CNC machine? I know CNC Music Factory.
You do know? Well, they've got machines that make horseshoes too. You just didn't know it. They're hidden in the back. Oh. No, if a machine shop.
Okay.
A milling machine, I guess.
Okay, we'll go with that term.
The CNC, I think they're computerized.
Kind of like the 3D printing type stuff, too.
Right, yeah.
All right, guys, stick around when we come back. Well, what did we learn? And we'll wrap up the show. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back.
Heather's not going to be the one on the show.
Oh, okay. No.
I'm trying to work out getting to the bottom of it.
Okay, all right, fine.
Okay. We'll get it straightened out.
Yeah, okay. What did we learn to wrap it up? You ready?
What did we learn?
We learned a lot. Here we go.
We learned don't drink swap water.
Oh, or suck down your lemon juice here without...
Don't drink out of a Deacon Live cup.
Don't breathe while you're drinking.
Right.
All right, you ready?
Yes, breathing and drinking don't go together.
No, especially underwater. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the #1 podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up, brought to you by Equine One. That's Equine One. Go to equine.one for 10% off of your hoof care needs. Put in the keyword podcast or Equine Dynamics and get 10% off of your order. And 10% off of his brain right now is Mike Stine. How are you?
10% off the 10%.
Right.
So it's 10% less than the normal 10%.
Mike is he's missing his coffee this morning, and he's got this swamp water that he's drinking, and
Everyone should drink swamp water.
something like that. And I'm dying over here drinking my lemon water. Don't breathe and drink at the same time, right?
It's got little wiggly things swimming in my water.
Gross, little sea monkeys.
Yeah.
All right, what did we learn today, Mike? Talking a little bit about the history of horseshoes. What did we learn about the history of horseshoes?
Well, they've all gone back to leather and grass and laced on steel and brass and copper and
Wood?
yeah.
Has wood been used as well?
Oh yeah, I've put wood on horses.
I know you put plywood on horses.
Remember when we had Dr. Stewart on here?
Yes.
He's put plenty of wood on horses.
Yeah, I've got the
Yes.
This-
the EVA, yes.
This
yes.
pad that
and
goes-
EVA foam has been put on horses, yes.
and I use this is my drink coaster, so it doesn't make noises when I bang my drink down the table.
Right.
So as long as we've had horses, they've had some type of shoe on them, dating all the way back to about 400 BC.
Well, yeah, but we've had horses longer than that.
Yeah.
And once we started putting them to work and we worked them harder than what their feet would handle, we started putting stuff on their feet.
And also the discussion of the horseshoe guide from the American Farrier's Journal. Is there anything from the American Farrier's Journal that was talking about the guide of the different horseshoes?
Well,
and everything?
they had a discussion about the many horseshoes that are on the market now, and there's so many of them out there. And that you're hearing a lot of talk about the polys and all that sort of deal.
Now, is there so many out there now because a lot of
3D printers.
Well, 3D printers, but a lot of the farriers want that out of the box on the horse type deal, and it's a lost art form because you've been doing it for 30 some odd plus years. I think even back in 400 BC you were doing it back then.
400 BC, yes.
That you physically forge shoes,
Right.
You know, you've got a blank, and then you make the shoe fit that horse instead of going, okay, what size is your horse? Oh, I've got this one. It's a size 13 with a B slot in it, and they pull it off the truck that way. Is that why there's so many more shoes out there now?
Well, it's a lot easier to shoe that way. It's not necessarily what's right for the horse. And, if you can't get it right for the horse, it doesn't matter what you put on. So you got to get it right for that, the mechanic setup for that horse as good as possible. And one of my things is like farriers learning to pull clips. A lot of farriers putting clips on all the time, but they can't pull a clip because there's so many pre-clip shoes. Before, when I started, 35 years ago, there were very few pre-clip shoes out there. Didn't see much. So if you're going to need clips in a situation, you needed to spend the time in to develop the skills to do it. So are we losing part of the skills and part of the art of being a farrier would be part of my question. I've had somebody pop up, well, you've got to do this and this and this and this and glue on and all this sort of thing on the foot. And I'm sitting there scratching my head thinking, why? Because so-and-so said, this one said, and all that, so I wouldn't put a shoe on it. Because why make it that complicated? And they're like, how did you do that? Because when I started, there wasn't the glue. There wasn't a lot of the stuff out there. So you had to figure out how to work with what you had and make it happen.
Do you think the horseshoe economy itself is doing better by creating all these different horseshoes rather than teaching someone how to make something fit?
I think that there's a lot of people that have figured out things in ways that makes it a little easier for us. Sure.
They can turn and burn and do
Right.
200 horses in a day.
But it takes some of the art, it takes some of the thinking out of it, it takes some of the skills out of it. There are plenty of people making things to make money. And I mean, look at Derek. I wish him well. I hope he makes a lot of money. I don't want anybody not to. Don't get me wrong.
I just want 10%. That's all I want, Derek.
Just 10%. It's 10%. But if the skills go away, it's like Clyde Caldwell told me. He said, Clyde was in his late 60s when I was 24.
Mm-hmm.
we're relearning how to shoe the horses because people didn't write books about it. The only one to learn from it was their apprentices. When horses started going out of use, a lot of that knowledge was lost. So we're trying to relearn how to do it. So down the road, when we lose these skills, at some point, do we say, ooh, we need these skills back? So we're going to have to refigure out how to do it because the guys who knew it, some of us are going to be gone.
I see the horse community where the farrier, basically, it's going to be not necessarily a farrier by definition of you. It's going to be a farrier that's going to come in and he's got a little machine about the size of his phone, and it's going to take a picture of the horse's foot and then spit out whatever that horse needs based on that foot, and he's just basically going to be an applicator. He's the one just sticking that horseshoe on. I'm not saying today, I'm not saying tomorrow, but just the way technology...
There's programs out there right now you can put on your phone to take a picture and line up all kinds of lines and measurements and everything else.
Oh, really? So we're already...
Well, I don't do that because I was brought up the way I was brought up.
Right.
And, you know, people say, well, unless you're using all this technology, you can't shoe a horse. And, you know, I was asked not too long ago, well, how did you do this, and this? I said, because I kind of watched the horse take a step or two, and that's what it looked like it needed. And, well, did you measure? No, I didn't. That's what it looked like it needed.
And talking... go ahead.
And it worked.
And talking terminology, definition of the word fuller shoe or horseshoe, fuller horseshoe or fullering a horseshoe.
To run a crease in a horseshoe, your creased horseshoes that are not plain stamped, that would be your crease or your fuller. The act of fullering the shoe spreads the metal out a little bit. So if you want to make a shoe wider, you might want to put a heavy fuller in it and push more metal out.
Which is easy to do with your little hammer over there.
That's what my little hammer is made for.
All right, we'd like to thank each and every one of you for listening to us. We'd like to especially thank Equine One for all their hoof care needs. Go to equine.one for 10% off. Put in podcast or Equine Dynamics. On behalf of Mike Stine over there.
Yes, have a good day and use your Equine One hoof dressing. Good stuff.
My name is Travis saying see you next week. Very good, Mike.
Sure.